I hope you're prepared to perhaps get triggered or maybe more deeply just awaken to some new perspectives that hopefully will be very supportive for your nervous system in this season of your life. If you've clicked this episode, you're curious, you're ready and open to the possibility that my lived experience may help you. Are you ready for a show that actually shifts you? With real, raw, honest conversations about what it takes to become the most embodied version of yourself. And are you ready to remember that the world really does need your medicine? This is the podcast to awaken that.
I can hear a calling.
Because we all feel our higher self pulling us to our next expansion. But the only way to really get there is by sharing our stories together. So welcome to the World Needs Your Medicine podcast. This is the place where we can have real conversations about the things that have worked for us, the lessons we've learned, the hard struggles along the way, and the things that have shifted us into the versions of ourselves we are now. Here on the show, you'll hear from some of the most incredible guests that have transformed their lives using the exact tools they talk about and offer inside each episode. I'm so honored to share this with you, and I can't wait to dive deeper, because when you see the power of what others have created, you believe you can create it too. And that's all we are really trying to remember, because the world really does need our medicine, and it starts by finding it within yourself. I'm Lauren Eliz Love, and let's dive into the show. Thanks for being here. It's been 2 weeks since I've recorded a podcast, and with no preparation and very little reflection, I have decided to jump into this conversation with you guys that I believe is like really, really important. So first of all, hello, welcome. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I hope you're ready to rock. I hope you're prepared to perhaps get triggered or maybe more deeply just awaken to some new perspectives that hopefully will be very supportive for your nervous system in this season of your life. If you've clicked this episode, you're curious, you're ready and open to the possibility that my lived experience may help you in some way, shape, or form. And, 2 weeks ago, I sat down and recorded this conversation, and I put it out on the internet. I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And there was no audio. The whole episode was silent, and I got messages. People were saying, Lauren, I don't hear anything. And that to me was such a reflection to say, wait, I need a minute before I actually speak this story, before I actually tell this narrative. I need to take a second to just really sit with what I'm about to share. And sometimes in your life, there may be things that are moving through, and you can grapple with this sensation of wanting to put it out there, wanting to talk about it, and wanting to let it be known, but simultaneously also feeling this tenderness to what you are about to say and feeling like, well, maybe I need to hold this for a minute. Maybe I'm not ready. And is that okay? How do I share things from a place of like wanting to help people when I'm still going through my process? I'm still trying to figure out what this process even is, It's been so common for me to get that question with so many people in the community, because when I started my business, when I started this path of showing up on the internet, my whole intention was to reclaim the things that I had been ashamed of, and to do that publicly, to talk about the stories of abuse, the experiences where I had really low self-worth, the traumas, the unraveling of like who I was and what I stood for. And, I've been thinking about that lately. The moments in my life where I took this leap to do something that felt incredibly brave and uncomfortable. The very first time I ever did that, I was walking away from a marriage, and nobody in my family really supported that decision. And that was because of their own conditionings about religion, and you should always stay married and you should never divorce. And it was hard because I had grown up in a culture where like the expectation was to stay, but my body was telling me to move in an incredibly different way. And I had to let go of the sort of projected expectation in order for me to like really follow what my body was telling me I needed to do. And then a few years later, when I walked away from my television career, it was kind of the same feeling. Everybody thought I was wrong. Like, what are you doing? You have a great job. You get a 401k. You have health benefits. You get time off. You're, interviewing all these famous people and working at like the biggest network of television in the world. What are you doing? But I knew in my body that what I wanted to do was not what I was doing. And both of those situations, both of those times, there was a process happening for me that led to that misalignment wake up where you're like, oh my God, this is just like so not what I'm supposed to be doing. And that process was me learning about myself, me developing my sense of worth, me figuring out who I am and what matters to me, and trying to develop into a greater sense of self. That journey of like devoting my heart to my own becoming was what led to the unraveling of the things that I was so deeply attached to because I was told and taught to attach to them. And I was in a culture and an environment in my upbringing and society where you should be attached to those things. But the more I became myself, the more I wanted to let go of those attachments, because those attachments were getting in the way of the deep study of becoming healthily attached to my true self. So in today's conversation, we're going to piggyback off of that because I know I'm not alone. I know there are so many of you going through this study of like ego death to wake up to who you are. And in that process, it's just really important that I share. I feel like it's really important that I share. And I hope this conversation helps you. I feel like it's a little bit uncomfortable for me because I'm vulnerable. It's vulnerable. It's always uncomfortable to be vulnerable. You're like, here I go. I'm going to share this stuff about myself and you're going to see all of me. But I feel like it's just my body's pulling me that way. And I've always felt this pull in my path to just be where I am and show you where I am, and to not be afraid of that visibility and the sensitivity that comes with that. It's just strengthening me to be able to share in real time. And that's also like something totally against the way the industry teaches, right? Like show people you know things, show people you're smart, show people you have it figured out, show people you're an expert, give them the problem you solve and target their pain points and speak to how much joy you have because you have it figured out. I don't want to play that game, actually. Like I just want to be true to what is true and not have to pretend. I don't want to pretend. Misalignment, man. I'm not a good pretender. I have a good imagination for sure, but pretending to be somewhere that I'm not authentically arrived at is just not, it's not, it doesn't resonate in my body. It doesn't feel good in my body. It's not healthy. So let's be real. Let's be raw. Let's talk about this season, this beautiful change that I've been waking up to. I've been thinking about like wanting to title this episode about my recent ego death and like letting go of millions, because I feel like, yeah, that's a good title. That's a good title for what we're going to talk about today. And I am just really hoping that for anybody who's been in the hustle and grind, that you find a knowing that you are not alone as you remove that attachment. And I think it's important to recognize that like so much of the culture that we live in and the society we live in is about achievement, more success, getting to this big place, being big, right? Like think about this, like why are you so conditioned to feel the pressure to be big? Like where does that come from? Why is that important to you? Why does that matter? And it matters because we want to feel good, but for some reason we feel like the only way to good is to like greatness. Like let's be great. Let's have tons of followers. Let's make millions of dollars. Let's have a really, really massive impact. Let's be known in a big way. What if I don't want to be known in a big way? Like, what if I actually want a small life? What if I want a simple life? What if I want minimalism? What if I want a soft, centered reality? Can I fully believe that a soft and centered reality is safe? So this is the conversation of how I have unraveled my attachments, my programmings, my resistance, my bullshit stories about what matters to find what really matters most. And I hope this conversation helps you today. So with that, enjoy this episode of The World Needs Your Medicine podcast. It's been 2 weeks since I've recorded a podcast, and with no preparation and very little reflection, I have decided to jump into this conversation with you guys that I believe is like really, really important. So first of all, hello, welcome. I hope you're having a beautiful day. I hope you're ready to rock. I hope you're prepared to perhaps get triggered or maybe more deeply just awaken to some new perspectives that hopefully will be very supportive for your nervous system in this season of your life. If you've clicked this episode, you're curious, you're ready and open to the possibility that my lived experience may help you in some way, shape, or form. And, 2 weeks ago, I sat down and recorded this conversation and I put it out on the internet. I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And there was no audio. The whole episode was silent, and I got messages. People were saying, Lauren, I don't hear anything. And that to me was such a reflection to say, wait, I need a minute before I actually speak this story, before I actually tell this narrative. I need to take a second to just really sit with what I'm about to share. And sometimes in your life, there may be things that are moving through, and you can grapple with this sensation of wanting to put it out there, wanting to talk about it, and wanting to let it be known, but simultaneously also feeling this tenderness to what you are about to say and feeling like, well, maybe I need to hold this for a minute. Maybe I'm not ready. And is that okay? How do I share things from a place of like wanting to help people when I'm still going through my process? I'm still trying to figure out what this process even is. You know, it's been so common for me to get that question with so many people in the community, because when I started my business, when I started this path of showing up on the internet, my whole intention was to reclaim the things that I had been ashamed of, and to do that publicly, to talk about the stories of abuse, the experiences where I had really low self-worth, the traumas, the unraveling of like who I was and what I stood for. And, you know, I've been thinking about that lately. The moments in my life where I took this leap to do something that felt incredibly brave and uncomfortable. The very first time I ever did that, I was walking away from a marriage, and nobody in my family really supported that decision. And that was because of their own conditionings about religion, and you should always stay married and you should never divorce. And it was hard because I had grown up in a culture where like the expectation was to stay, but my body was telling me to move in an incredibly different way. And I had to let go of the sort of projected expectation in order for me to like really follow what my body was telling me I needed to do. And then a few years later, when I walked away from my television career, it was kind of the same feeling. Everybody thought I was wrong. Like, what are you doing? You have a great job. You get a 401k. You have health benefits. You get time off. You're, you know, interviewing all these famous people and working at like the biggest network of television in the world. What are you doing? But I knew in my body that what I wanted to do was not what I was doing. And both of those situations, both of those times, there was a process happening for me that led to that misalignment wake up where you're like, oh my God, this is just like so not what I'm supposed to be doing. And that process was me learning about myself, me developing my sense of worth, me figuring out who I am and what matters to me, and trying to develop into a greater sense of self. That journey of like devoting my heart to my own becoming was what led to the unraveling of the things that I was so deeply attached to because I was told and taught to attach to them. And I was in a culture and an environment in my upbringing and society where you should be attached to those things. But the more I became myself, the more I wanted to let go of those attachments, because those attachments were getting in the way of the deep study of becoming healthily attached to my true self. So in today's conversation, we're going to piggyback off of that because I know I'm not alone. I know there are so many of you going through this study of like ego death to wake up to who you are. And in that process, it's just really important that I share. I feel like it's really important that I share. And I hope this conversation helps you. I feel like it's a little bit uncomfortable for me because I'm vulnerable. It's vulnerable. It's always uncomfortable to be vulnerable. You know, you're like, here I go. I'm going to share this stuff about myself and you're going to see all of me. But I feel like it's just my body's pulling me that way. And I've always felt this pull in my path to just be where I am and show you where I am, and to not be afraid of that visibility and the sensitivity that comes with that. It's just strengthening me to be able to share in real time. And that's also like something totally against the way the industry teaches, right? Like show people you know things, show people you're smart, show people you have it figured out, show people you're an expert, give them the problem you solve and target their pain points and speak to how much joy you have because you have it figured out. I don't want to play that game, actually. Like, I just want to be true to what is true and not have to pretend. I don't want to pretend. Misalignment, man. I'm not a good pretender. I have a good imagination for sure, but pretending to be somewhere that I'm not authentically arrived at is just not, it's not, it doesn't resonate in my body. It doesn't feel good in my body. It's not healthy. So let's be real. Let's be raw. Let's talk about this season, this beautiful change that I've been waking up to. I've been thinking about like wanting to title this episode about my recent ego death and like letting go of millions, because I feel like, yeah, that's a good title. That's a good title for what we're going to talk about today. And I am just really hoping that for anybody who's been in the hustle and grind, that you find a knowing that you are not alone as you remove that attachment. And I think it's important to recognize that like so much of the culture that we live in and the society we live in is about achievement, more success, getting to this big place, being big, right? Like think about this, like why are you so conditioned to feel the pressure to be big? Like where does that come from? Why is that important to you? Why does that matter? And it matters because we want to feel good, but for some reason we feel like the only way to good is to like greatness. Like, let's be great. Let's have tons of followers. Let's make millions of dollars. Let's have a really, really massive impact. Let's be known in a big way. What if I don't want to be known in a big way? Like, what if I actually want a small life? What if I want a simple life? What if I want minimalism? What if I want a soft, centered reality? Can I fully believe that a soft and centered reality is safe? So this is the conversation of how I have unraveled my attachments, my programmings, my resistance, my bullshit stories about what matters to find what really matters most. And I hope this conversation helps you today. So with that, enjoy this episode of the World Needs Your Medicine podcast. I'd like to tell you that ego deaths are easy. Like, wouldn't that be nice? Like, oh, it just died. This part of me just like easy, let go. But it's not. It gets easier, I believe, because we learn how to continuously shed and release in every cycle and season of our life. And I think if you're someone like me, you can very much identify that there are many different versions of you in this lifetime, like this feline energy that exists within us, where cats have 9 lives. Yeah, guess what? So do humans sometimes. Like, we can look at our life and say, wow, like, I remember this identity. I remember that identity. Now I'm becoming this identity. And years from now, I'll be another identity that I can't even comprehend or conceptualize here in this present moment. And that process of like becoming is a scary process, because there is such an element of surrender that comes to step in. It's not like God gives you this little letter and says, okay, you're going to let go of X, Y, and Z, but I promise you're going to gain A, B, and C, and that's going to feel 1, 2, and 3. Go ahead. Easy. Here you go. Everything's safe. Everything's secure. You know what to do. I feel like if we can get like a little bit spiritual about this for a minute, and maybe first I should just explain like what ego deaths are, but I think you can probably comprehend. I'll come back to that note. if we can get spiritual for a minute and realize that like we are here in this human experience in a soul incarnation, like your soul came into this lifetime to learn some things, to be a human, to have the experience of individuality, and also to have a study of interacting and building relation with all of life around you. And in that process of that study of like learning to become you and also learning to like interact with world around you, you are trying to rewrite certain things that maybe the generations before you didn't have the resources, tools, or levels of consciousness to rewrite. They were operating in certain paradigms. And I know this to be true because when I look at my lineage, my grandmother, like holy shit, my grandma, like my mom's mom, such an incredible story. She came to America out of poverty. Her father died in Italy. Her family had no money and they really struggled to even put food on the table. And at the time, the United States was granting kind of like these lottery invitations to certain people in other countries that had a birthday within a certain year and time frame. And my grandmother was one of those people, and she could come to America. Come to America. There's opportunity, there's jobs, right? You can actually make living. And so this like obsession of like provision and survival was an actual present need. And if you look at like Maslow's hierarchy of consciousness, which is, we can just say it's kind of colonized, but there's an important part of this because it is truth in our history. When your number one focus is survival, like putting food on the table and actually being able to live, you cannot ascend to these other states of consciousness study, right? Spiritual awakening and connection to God are limited because you're trying so hard to survive. And that's the lineage I came from on both sides of my family, where there was this like really, really deep actual hunger, right? To be able to provide. So my grandmother took this like very big risk to shift her life out of fear, and fear motivated her to actually make change and do something different. And that's a process that I'm very familiar with. I'm sure you're very familiar with it too, where you've been in these certain situations where like you had to make decisions out of survival. And that might not be like putting food on the table. That might be, my body is so incredibly sick, I have to make a change in my life. This marriage is toxic, I have to get out. This relationship is killing me, I have to end it. We feel that familiar knowing of like what life and death can kind of feel like in our bodies, even if it isn't actually physical life or death, because our lineage has had that experience. I went to go visit my grandma recently, and she and I were having this conversation, and I was very honest with her when she asked me about my life and, you know, what I'm doing and what's new. And I just said, Grandma, I don't want to work hard anymore. I'm done working hard. And I was actually really afraid to tell her that because her entire lifetime was about working hard and provision. Not only did she come to America out of that fear of survival for her family, but years later, when she had a husband and 5 kids and he died in his 40s, she had to provide for 5 children. And that same survival pattern kicked in of like, I must do what I have to do to take care of the people I love. And so this is, you know, very encoded in her. And I was afraid and to even just tell her, but her reaction to me was, Lauren, we worked hard. You don't have to. And it was so beautiful because I think in all of our spiritual perspectives of life, we do want to break the cycles that our ancestors carried. We do want to say, no, we're done with this. Like, I'm not going to replay this pattern. And that spiritual evolution in us, it really, really requires us to move differently than the people who raised us, the people who came before us, the people who taught us what our values are, what matters, what's important, what to focus on. Like when you're raised, we actually have to break all of that and let that die to become this truly embodied version of self. And I think in all of that, we can just say in this spiritual experience where we're stepping into 9 different versions of ourselves in this lifetime and changing and shifting and growing, we are in the study of life, which actually is simply the study of dying. We are learning how to die. You guys know I'm a ayahuasca studier. Been sitting with the medicine for the last 7 years, and I've been apprenticing with my teacher and bringing people to Costa Rica for his work. And that medicine is called the Vine of the Dead because it brings up all of the shadow that is misaligned for us to say, hey, are you ready to let this die? Are you ready to let this go? And that death process, God never hands you a list and say, hey, let this go and ABC will happen and you'll get 1, 2, 3 emotions and, just let it all go. It doesn't work like that. Surrender, if we look at death, like you die and nobody on this planet has any idea what happens next. It's the great mystery of life. We have no idea where we're going after this, right? We really don't know. There's no list. You may feel like you know. You may be devoted to a religious or spiritual perspective that makes you believe that you know what you know, but at the end of the day, we really physically actually don't know. So all of these different forms and cycles of ourself, as we let the ego die, we are learning how to die. And it gets easier and easier and easier for those of us who are on a spiritual path because we're actually learning and understanding how to do it. You may be thinking to yourself, no, I've been letting my ego die like over and over again. It's getting harder and harder and harder. And that might be true, but you do get to this place where you go through the eye of the needle where there's this big death. And then as you continue to grow and die, the other part or phase of that process gets easier because you start to understand, like, oh, I see the patterns. I get this now. Like, I get this process because I've been through it so much and I can see the patterns. And if you don't, get help to understand, right? Ego deaths for me, when I look at my timeline, one of the reasons they've become so easy, not easy, that's like not the right word, but just like more smooth, is because I've become more resourced. Like I'm more resourced in my nervous system. I've made changes to my life so that I feel like I have a greater capacity to hold these things. And I also have community support. I have a spiritual teacher. I have deep spiritual friends. I have an incredible partner that allows me to feel resourced. And that resourcing anchors you into a sense of safety with that co-regulation, that mirroring, to be able to say, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, I feel like I can do this. So ego deaths essentially are, I think, defined in many different ways by many different people. But for me, what this looks like is hard to explain. Hard to explain, but we're going to try so that you can rack your brain. We are attached to many different things. And some of these things that we are attached to, they shape our identity. Like, this is who I am. And when that I am is I would say like an unhealthy attachment, there's a need for it in order for you to feel a certain way. So for example, I need this identity because it makes me feel important. But what happens when I don't have this identity? Am I still important? I need this identity to feel significant. But what happens when I don't have this identity? Do I feel significant? It's like if you were like an Olympic gold medalist and like that's your identity. What happens when you don't have that? Who am I? Who am I? How do I find my sense of self-confidence? How do I find my sense of self-worth? How do I find my sense of like inner knowing when I don't have this thing that I've defined myself as for so long? And we have, I believe, definitions of our identity that sustain and carry through in all of these different lifetimes and versions of ourselves. Like I can say, like, in every single version of myself, I was a very tender person. Like, I'm a very tender, sensitive, sentient being, right? Like, I always had that. That's my identity. Like, that's the cultivation of my heart space. Like, I'm always developing that. I can say that in every iteration of myself, I had a drive for sure. There's like a drive in me to like be true to myself and to figure out what that means. That version of my identity is not going anywhere, but those versions of identity are not attached to anything outside of me. They're just who I am. That's just like the I am of love, right? Like I care, and I care about my well-being. I didn't always care about my well-being, but I've figured out a way to use these qualities that are intrinsically true in my identity to be of service to myself. Like we all have qualities that are intrinsically true of our identity. We've come here to study them, right? What I said before, like me, like a tender, sentient being, like that's a core identity within me. And I'm constantly developing it and learning about it and figuring out how can I give this medicine to myself? How can I make this medicine not attached to anything outside of me? How can I make this medicine so resilient that nothing outside of me wavers it? Like if somebody says I'm a horrible person, I'm a terrible person, that sentient, self-sensitive being, do I allow that to be altered by the relational energies around me, or do I stay in my truth and know the resilience of that medicine and keep that harnessed inside of me and not let things outside of me impact it, right? Like this is a life study of identity, and what we let go of often in the ego are the things that I don't want to say are misaligned, but maybe we're letting go of the aspects of those things that are not in right relation to higher states of consciousness, higher versions of ourself that we're stepping into. So when I let go of my first marriage in, that was 2011, I was waking up to like this whole veil was being lifted. Like, Jesus Christ, wow, I'm married to an addict. I didn't know. This is an abusive relationship. I didn't realize. This is grooming. He was 15 years older than me. Oh my gosh, like I've been in a warped relationship and a twisted reality, and I didn't even realize. And that was all happening, and it was all confronting. But I had grasped to this relationship because in order for me to like prove myself of like how put together I was or how successful I was to my parents, to my lineage, my family, I needed to get married. I wanted to have the white picket fence and the great job and like the happily ever after, so I could arrive in some sort of state of security. But that was all attachment. I need this to feel a certain way. I need these things outside of me to feel a certain way. And letting go of that was really scary because like, who am I without all of that? Who am I if I say like, none of this actually matters? What matters more is my inner landscape of peace and the intuition that's guiding me to let go of this. And then, a few years later, that death portal continued where I let go of my television career. And that was, again, the same thing. I had my whole identity was my career. It was my whole sense of self. I didn't know how to talk to people unless I was speaking about my entrepreneurial path. I'm not my entrepreneurial path, my corporate path. Like, I'm a businesswoman in corporate, right? Like, I'm doing this thing. This is who I am. I'm a television news producer. I'm building my success, climbing the ladder and the glass ceiling for women. And that was important to me because I really wanted to see that I was successful, because I didn't want to be in the identity of being a fuck up, because I had been a fuck up, right? So I rejected a version of myself, claimed an entirely opposite side of the spectrum, and that extreme attachment, anxiously wanting to be this version of myself, successful TV producer, and being completely avoidant to this old version of me that was, in darkness, as an addict, as somebody who like struggled, somebody who didn't have her shit together. She was a total emotional mess. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be this like really resilient person. And so that wasn't sustainable. That wasn't in truth. That wasn't in healthy relation. So it died. Like all the things, like if you look at the earth, right? Like when plants grow and other plants around them die, the most resilient ones survive. And resilience in a spiritual evolution and study is about integrity. What is true and what is most in alignment with you is going to thrive, and what is not is going to die. Because we're becoming closer and closer to God as we grow and as we get closer to our death. So yeah, all of this to say, we can now, 20 minutes in with all this level of consciousness, we can talk about this like recent death portal that has been, so illuminating to me. I know like many of you guys have come to me over the last several years with this like devotion to want to build a business and wanting to like be entrepreneurial successful and have the big Instagram following and the big milestones that you've seen me have. And for a long time in my entrepreneurial path, my business was my identity. It was the same exact thing, just in a different costume, right? Like, okay, I'm not a wife, so now I'm going to be a TV producer. Okay, I'm not a TV producer, so now I'm going to be this entrepreneurial person. And it's just been really interesting because I always felt like it was incredibly important to me to have these certain milestones, and I would chase these milestones. Like, okay, let me have my first 10K month. Okay, I did it. Get the champagne, celebrate, amazing. I'm going to have a $20,000 a month. Okay, great. Now let's go on vacation. And now I'm going to have a $60,000 a month. Okay, amazing. Now I want $1 million business. And, everything that I was pushing to achieve, it was really interesting because I spent many years grasping to it. I was grasping to it like, this is so important. This is so important. And I remember there was this like one time I sat down on January 1st and I recorded this video on my phone. I said, this is going to be the year I'm deciding that I make $2 million. And I had, at the time the year before, I think I did like 700,000. So I was claiming this like big milestone for myself. And I didn't hit it that year. Like, let's just be honest, because I was coming from ego. I was coming from like this place where this is so important to my sense of self-worth. I have to make this happen in order for me to feel good about myself. And I was pushing and pushing and pushing. And that particular year, my whole nervous system cracked out. This was in 2018, 2019. And I developed a severe chronic illness. My body started shutting down. I was losing my hair. I had this skin on fire rash. My whole body was in heat. I couldn't function. I had brain fog all the time. I had pain in my body 24/7. It was like the pressure that I was putting on myself was killing me in a way. So I took this sabbatical in 2019. I took this year off. I moved to Sedona, started studying with ayahuasca, and had this year of being immersed in the psychedelic initiation of my own self-identity. And in that process, there was so much that I had to face, like my sexual trauma, my inability to feel loved by my father, my lack of acceptance that I felt from my mother, my deep ingrained sense of low self-worth, my grasping to all these different parts of me. And it was so challenging. It was so challenging, but in all of that facing and that confrontation, there was this new version of me that was coming out. Like, wow, like who am I when I feel like I'm not attached to all of these things anymore? And that's, the process of healing. When I talk about this in a lot of my studies, it's like we're learning how to face these shadows in ourself that have been, unconsciously driving our entire life. And we get to ask this question, like, am I in right relation with this shadow? Like, do I smile into the darkness? Do I say I love you to this part of me? Or have I been ignoring it so much that it's controlling my entire life? What we resist persists, right? So like ignoring these dark parts of me and just kind of moving forward and trying to achieve a bunch of different things, my body was holding all of these experiences of my life, my childhood trauma, my sexual trauma, my religious trauma, and everything was just unconsciously driving the show. You have to be afraid. You need to survive. You need to make things happen. This is really important. You need to be successful. You need to be seen. You need to prove to everybody that they were wrong about you. It's a hard life to live, and the body will feel it. The body will feel it. So in all of that let go of like the pressure and facing my shadow in that time, there was another ego death. What if I let go of this identity of being the creator of Business Babe and showing people, that was my brand at the time, showing people how to create entrepreneurial success just like me? Like, what if I let go of that? Who will I be? I remember I was sitting outside with my teacher and I was so challenged by this question. Like, I had no idea what I was going to do. Again, God wasn't handing me direction. God wasn't handing me anything because I wasn't walking through the death portal. I was clinging, I was grasping. I didn't want to let go of what I had built because I was so afraid of like not knowing what was next and am I safe? I was still in that like difficult death. It's hard. Letting go of these things is hard. It's so hard. I can't do it. I can't let go because I don't know what is coming next. And I need to know in order to feel safe. And I remember expressing this to my teacher, and he took a big puff of his tobacco and he looked me right in the eye and he said, "Lauren, you just need to figure out what the fuck you want to do." And it was one of those moments, like, I don't know if you can relate to this, where like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do. Like, yes, that's what's happened. Duh, like, but you hear it in a different way. Like, it was almost like that moment, it was like, whoa, what do I actually really want? Where's the desire in my body? It's not about making the right decision that works. It's not about making a decision that's for other people. It's not about making a choice that's going to get me like validated or seen or heard or, doing it right. What is my desire telling me? What do I really actually want? And I think this process of letting things die, yes, it's about learning how to die and surrender to like get to the end of our life. But I think it's also for women about reclaiming our desire that was taken from us. Like, I didn't grow up in an environment where like my desires were important. My desires were an inconvenience, or they were inappropriate, or they were, not good for the family. Like, what I wanted to do was often like not right. So I learned like my desires were wrong. I learned that desire was shameful. I learned that desire was selfish. I learned that desire was ignored. And that's how I was raised in that environment. So I think it's also, in these ego deaths, it's like, well, what is my authentic craving? What's my body craving? What am I hungry for? What am I truly in desire of? And sometimes those desires really make no sense to everything that came before you, because all of the ego is edging that beautiful godlike frequency out. It's pushing it away. So it's in ego identity, like, I need this marriage to survive because I need to show my parents that I have it all together. And desire is, I deserve better than this. I'm going to walk away. And in television news producing, the ego is saying it's really important for you to make good money and have a great job because you need to prove to everybody that you're not a mess. And the desire is, I don't want to be working in news. This is toxic. This is a really unhealthy environment. My body doesn't want to be here. So like the more that the ego starts to die, the body starts to come back online to be the compass instead of the stories that have been keeping us in a state of suffering. So in that moment with my teacher where he was like, oh, what do you actually want to do? Like, what do you really actually want to do? I realized I really want to help people heal. I really want to help people heal. I want to, these things that I'm going through this year in this psychedelic sabbatical in the middle of the desert, like I'm learning things that need to be talked about, need to be shared, need to be awakened to. And this was all happening during COVID where, people were waking up to how dysregulated their nervous systems were and how much they were in need of support and healing. And the HEAL program was birthed. And it's interesting because, if I look at my timeline, it's constantly, and this is where I have to give myself a lot of forgiveness, and maybe you can relate to this. It's constantly this process of like forgetting and remembering, forget and then remember, forget and remember. And I always know I'm growing when I'm staying stuck in that story for a shorter amount of time. But up until that point in Sedona, I had forgotten that like the whole purpose of me stepping into my life path was about service of trauma and like doing right by these traumatic experiences I went through to actually heal my life, to be in my highest sense of self-worth, and to share those stories vulnerably to inspire change. Like when I left TV and I had no idea what was next, that was what ended up becoming next. It was my what is perfection era, sharing my story, sharing my vulnerability, sharing my lived experience, just being in that true raw, like, this is my trauma and I'm going to talk about it because I grew up in an environment where you are not supposed to talk about these things. And I'm tired of being in a world where I'm taught trauma doesn't matter. Just put on a professional face. Just pretend to have it all figured out. Just show people how successful you are. Don't talk about your trauma. Don't talk about your insecurities. Don't talk about the shadows. But this is like patriarchal conditioning at its core because it controls women. Women don't heal when there's this hierarchical expert leader teaching them what to do. We heal in circle. We heal in vulnerability. We heal in those authentic conversations where we can actually mirror to one another who we are, what we are, how we're learning, how we're developing. And we all have brilliance to share, but that brilliance requires us to let down the wall of the ego, to actually be ourselves, to show people who we really are. That's when we grow together. It's in that weaving of that cycle, that circular kind of rhythmic pattern of us together having these dialogues, deepening and understanding the remembrance of our own codes through the mirrored reflection of each other. So in my journey of like forgetting and remembering, as the business babe era was dying and I was in this psychedelic sabbatical, I remembered like this is about healing. This isn't about teaching people how to make a ton of money. This isn't about teaching people how to grow on Instagram. This is about healing yourself and letting go of all of these things that have been creating such a state of suffering and unhappiness in our life. Trauma actually matters. Trauma actually matters. So in that era, designing the Heal program, putting out Wild Wealthy Feminine, right? Like putting out these offerings that were really spiritual and psychedelic in their transmission. Like many people said, those programs, they feel like ayahuasca ceremonies. Like they're so deep. They're so immersive. They were truly life-changing for so many people. And that season of my life, I made millions from that work. I finally actually arrived at this outcome that was so important to me when I actually stopped caring about it. When it didn't become, when it wasn't this attached thing to like my identity. I was just doing what I felt was important. I was doing what I felt was my soul's calling. I was lit up by my work. I was having so much joy. I was doing it. And I made millions doing it. And I remember having this moment. It was at the end of a year. And I asked my husband, how much money did we make last year? Oh, $1.1 million. I didn't even know. I wasn't even paying attention to it. This milestone that was so important to me, was so necessary to my sense of self-worth and validation all those years ago. I had hit it and I didn't even know, because I was so happy in my life and my service and what I was doing. Oh my gosh. But, and also, we forget and then we have to remember, right? Like we forget and then we have to remember. So in that process, like, okay, I hit $1 million, but like, can I sustain that? And my life, and this is what like nobody talks about on the internet, like when you start making that type of money, your life expands out to support that type of lifestyle, or and maybe not to support that type of lifestyle, but essentially I guarantee like 99.999% of people who are making $1 million are spending a hell of a lot more money than they were when they were making $100,000. Like you start to stretch out, and the ratios that you're comfortable with and the ratios that your nervous system has become familiar to will repeat. So let's just say you are somebody who spends 90% of your 6-figure income. You're going to spend 90% of your $1 million income. You'll figure out a way to do it. You'll figure it out unconsciously sometimes, right? So everything gets expanded, and that includes all the things that are not in right relation. So for me, you know, I had a bigger team. I had more responsibility. I had a very, very laborious launch schedule, and I was traveling 30% of the year facilitating ayahuasca ceremonies, and I was doing all of this stuff, constantly filling my plate, because what I had built had gotten large, and I needed to step into that in order to meet it. So, you know, I would do things like I would get off of a plane, rush to my hotel room, and pray that the Wi-Fi worked, because I had a scheduled call that I couldn't miss. And I would travel and I would facilitate, and then I would come back and I would have, you know, 5 or 6 calls on the schedule, because everything that I had taken off to facilitate medicine for, you know, like I had to come back and fix that, all those things into my schedule, like in a fixated way. It was all intense. There was no space to rest. There was no space to like take a pause. I get it. Like, it's really cool. You want $1 million business, but like, do you know what that means? Do you actually understand what that means? Like, what do you have to do in order to make that happen? Like, look at that. And for me, that was launching 3 programs, one of which was a mastermind, twice a year. So I was in launch enrollment every other month. I was promoting something every other month. I was constantly trying to sell something, right, to fill these things. I had 34 mastermind students. I had 10 one-on-one clients, and I had programs with hundreds of people inside. And I was also creating digital courses that had to be released to bridge the gap of reaching those numbers. And quite frankly, I just didn't want to do it anymore. It all became too much. And I didn't acknowledge that. I didn't acknowledge that within myself because I had become this identity that was important to me. I'm a successful entrepreneur. Look at me. I can teach you how to be a successful entrepreneur. Come sign up with me. And everything about my life was dependent on that identity. How I put food on the table, the way in which I worked, my relationship with my husband, like everything, my business was leaking into everything. I had no sovereignty really, because it was all dependent on my ability to thrive in the online space. And as I continued to grow, I became more and more aware that this was not the path I wanted to pursue. And I don't mean that from a place of like what I taught was wrong. Oh my gosh, I had some of the most incredible experiences with students. I loved my work when I was doing it. But I started to get curious, like, what if I was nobody? Like, what if I just knitted every evening for 3 hours? What if I didn't share my entire life on the internet? What would it look like if I stopped doing all these things? I started to get curious. What do I desire? And I could feel myself recognizing that there was a deepening coming. There was this invitation to get silent. There was this calling to go slow. There was this need to like root down that was starting to illuminate. And at the end of last year, when I sat down and picked my word, like what is my word for the year, I picked the word rooted, because I had felt like everything that I built, while it was really big and glamorous, it wasn't rooted. It all had this sensation of, this is temporary. Like this can all fall apart in a minute if I don't show up and do what I'm supposed to do. If I don't create content for a week, like I don't know if my business can sustain. If I don't have these employees, I don't know if this thing will exist. Like everything was just so pressured. And in that rootedness, I made a decision to stop working so hard. Like what would happen if I just stopped working so hard? And I say I made that decision, but I feel like the I needs to be clarified, because it wasn't like a conscious, I'm going to do this now sort of thing. It was my body making the decision that it could no longer hold that large capacity of intensity. And I think this is, I know we talk about ego death from this place of like, it's almost like the mind, like how do you conceptualize yourself, and that's going to die, and like this way in which you see yourself, that's going to die. But there's this whole process that happens in the body where like the misalignment becomes very apparent in how you feel in your physical body. And so this like stress pattern started to come up, and I noticed that like my breathing was getting tight, and I would feel these like heart things happening, and I wasn't sleeping well. And I'm like, wow, my body is really going through it. My body's really going through it. Everything that I was holding was, I don't want to say it was like I didn't have the capacity to hold it, but like I didn't have the capacity to hold it. And like, that's okay. I feel like that if we could like take one point and be like, that's it, pay attention to that. The storyline that like, if you don't have the capacity to hold a lot, there's something wrong with your nervous system. You're doing it wrong. You're not put together. You don't have it all figured out. You need to work on yourself to hold a greater capacity. Like maybe you don't want more capacity. Maybe you want less. Maybe authentically in your body, you're just feeling like simplicity is calling you. And can you let that be okay? And what do you have to let go of in order to let that be okay? So for me, it was like my body's wants simplicity. Like I want to wake up every morning and be like, what do I want to do today? Not like, what are my client calls and like, what's my schedule and how many hours do I have to sit in front of the computer? Like, I don't want that. Who wants that? So I was waking up to like this curiosity of like returning back to focusing on the trauma work that I am meant to do. And I say that because it was showing up within me first. It was like, oh, you've made this identity of success so important to you. And you realized it wasn't important. You realized it didn't matter to your sense of self-worth. How beautiful. What do you want to do with that now? And it was interesting because that last year, mastermind students, one-on-one students, students inside of my programs, everybody was dismantling the ego of success. Everybody came to me with this hyper intense fixation of like, I need to build my business. I need to make it successful. This is so important to me. How do I get clients? How do I build my Instagram? What type of content do I create? And by the end of our time together, they're like, oh, I can trust my process. And like, I don't need to have it all figured out. And, you know, I don't need to put so much pressure on this. There's more to life. Like we were all figuring it out together. And in the ayahuasca work I was doing with clients, it was kind of like this similar thing where, you know, people were coming into this work and they're like, I want to drink medicine so I could figure out what my $1 million business idea is. And confrontingly and surprisingly, they would be faced with this realization like, whoa, I have so much insecurity. I have so much doubt. I have so much shadow. I have so much of myself that I don't love. I have so much control in my body. I need to work on all this first. And that is the path of my legacy. Like, I'm sorry, but if you have been following me because you think I'm going to teach you how to make millions and how to like create content on the internet, you're not here for the reasons that resonate with my truth. Like, sure, you can get some value out of my offerings and my study and my lived experience, but the core of my work is the deep devotion to changing the interpersonal relationship you have with yourself, to be somebody who says, I can say what I want. I can be who I am. I can feel safe at every season and cycle of my journey. I don't need to prove anything to anybody. I'm enough in every season and every iteration of me. Can we get there? Like, what would your life look like if you actually faced all of the trauma patterns, all of the dysregulation in your nervous system, all of the feelings of not enoughness, all of the things that you have been saying, oh, I moved through that, but you really actually didn't because it continues to play out in your life. Can we go there? And going there for me has been hard. It has not been my whole life. I've been going there. I've been looking at all these things and like questioning all these aspects of myself and choosing different timelines. Going there has given me the greatest liberation in my life. And I guess I just got tired of people bypassing that for, I'm going to teach you how to go viral on the internet. And I'm going to teach you how to create a funnel. And I'm going to teach you how to build your business. Like, enough. Like, I guarantee, like, the only reason that you want that thing to be successful so bad and you're putting so much pressure on it is because you don't have the sense of self-worth that can be unattached. I want to feel worthy no matter what. I want to have nothing and feel everything. I want to create a feeling and a relation with myself that is so unshakable and so unwavering that I know that I'm worthy of love, that I'm worthy of peace, that I'm worthy of patience, that I'm worthy of trust and compassion. And I give myself those things all the time. And I don't judge any version of myself that didn't have it figured out. That's the goal. That's the outcome of life. That's liberation. That's freedom. To not be attached to all these things that make us, important. Like, oh, I need to make sure I don't have gray roots, and I need to wear my makeup, and I need to have my body right, and I need to be successful in my business, and I need to prove. Aren't you tired? Oh, that's tired. That's so exhausting. So I'm sharing all this because in this study of my rootedness, I started to prioritize the study of somatic experiencing that I'm now bringing people onto my land to experience. I've been working with clients one-on-one on my property, like really low cost. You come to my house, we sit in nature, we do this work. And I've been passing down some of this recoding that has been moving through me in my own life, where we can let go of all these attachments and really come into ourselves and not make all these things outside of us so important. And I remember at the end of last year when I knew that this was happening, and I could feel myself like, oh, Lauren, you're gonna let some things die here. Like something's happening. Something's happening. You chose the word rooted. Be careful, because everything that is not meant to carry through into your next cycle of life is gonna go. And I had this conversation with my partner, and I was like, I'm just so afraid to let go of all these things. Like, I'm going to let go of trying to make money. I'm going to let go of being that person who's the business coach for other people. I'm going to let go. I started to share this with him, right? Like, these are all the things I'm letting go of. What if I let go of all of this and I'm miserable? Like, what if I let go of all these parts of my life that I'm attached to and I'm miserable? And he just looked at me and he said, what if you let go of all of these things and your life becomes more simple and it makes you happy in a way that you've never experienced before? What if that? I get chills as I say it because my life right now is so simple. I have beautiful one-on-one clients where we do deep, intimate work. I have students coming to my land for somatic experiencing. We're working with plants. We're working without plants. I'm having long conversations with them underneath this beautiful oak tree in my backyard and helping them rewire their nervous systems. I'm doing the work that I really know I'm meant to do. And leaning in to the unknown is what opened all of this for me. Like, I definitely had these really, really deep fears. Like, who am I without all of these things? But I've been there before. Like, I've been through seasons of my life where I asked that same question, took the leap anyway, and found happiness beyond my wildest dreams. I'm safe to step into unknowns because I'm supported. I'm supported because I'm doing it with integrity, right? Like, I'm leaning into what feels alive for me, and I'm trusting what feels good, and I'm curious about what I'm called to, and I'm listening to my body. That's all in integrity. And if you live your life like that, like, you are so safe. You're so safe. You're opening up to something new. And yes, it requires you to surrender and let go of things that you thought were really important. But they're not. Because at the end of the day, what your soul is called to and what you desire will never steer you wrong. If it's an integrity with, like, what is best for me? If I'm treating my body like a child and I say, what is my body telling me? Let me honor those needs of the body. Do I need to work less? Do I need to change my direction? Do I need to slow down? If that's what body is saying and I'm advocating for that, I am so safe. And life may not look the way that you expected it to. But trust me when I say this, it is going to become more magical than you have ever dreamed of. Because you're putting what matters to you at the center of your altar. As we wind down this episode of the World Needs Your Medicine podcast, I just want to say thank you so much for listening. It's such an honor to bring you the most incredible guests here on the show. And if you have suggestions, ideas, or things that you would like to contribute, feel free to email us, press@laurenoflove.com. In listening to today's conversation, if there was something that really spoke to you, I invite you to share this conversation with somebody that you love. Talk about it with your friends. Post the replay on your social media platforms. You can even tag us at The World Needs Your Medicine on Instagram. And at any time, it would mean so much to us if you could leave a review on the show. If you're listening on Spotify, just put 5 stars and write something heartfelt on this particular episode if it really spoke to you. If you're on iTunes, all you have to do is just press review and leave your heartfelt reflection in the notes. And if you're listening on YouTube, please come subscribe and continue to follow along for the video format of our show. I'm so happy you're here. Again, I'm Lauren Eliz Love, and to learn more about me, you can go to Lauren of Love on Instagram or laurenoflove.com. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for showing up to do your work. As you grow, stretch, change, and expand, the world needs your medicine, and you're going to start to discover that. So if at any point you feel inspired to join our community, you can go ahead and visit laurenoflove.com/app. This is the sanctuary. I show up and share my courses, my programs, and everything I teach in the online space. That's laurenoflove.com/app. APP. Thank you for being here, guys. I'll see you on another episode very soon.